Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Those who keep their faith in Sigmar will be well rewarded for it, as we have the Empire versus the Greenskins in this Warhammer World Championship matchup between TTR, otherwise known as Tutorial, on the Empire side, and ODM Supermunchkin. So for the forces of Sigmar, it is going to be a bunch of infantry going to be surrounding Volkmar the Grim as the powerhouse in this lineup, as he's going to be bringing pretty much his full kit here, as he does have the Grand Soulfire Bombardment, the Grand Shield of Faith, we have the Grand Hammer of Sigmar, Banishment, and he has his Jade Griffin, and he even has his Benediction, giving us a little leadership in an AoE centered around himself. So a very strong lord in pretty much every matchup at this point. He also has a couple of huntsmen going to be up in front of the rest of the army, going to be providing a little bit of firepower, and they do have a bonus versus large on their missile fire, so that'll be very good against like any of the trolls and any of the other cavalry, because there's not going to be a whole lot of mobility on the Empire side, as we do have some outriders with grenade launchers, but they're not going to trade very well into like cavalry or anything else. Just pretty much a good chaff clearing tool. But the only real strong mobility that can deal with Cav is going to be these Demigryph Knights with halberds, going to be coming out of the tree line here, and they do need to be a little careful. While they will be able to outclass any and all Greenskin cavalry, just the sheer numbers of the Greenskin side is going to be putting a little bit of a hurt on them, so they do have to be a little mindful of that. But they do have plenty of support in the meantime, because they have all of this infantry, so it's just going to be spearmen, halberdiers all the way across the board. We're not going to be seeing any of like the Sigmar sons, but yeah, just a bunch of spearmen. We do have one swordsman thrown into the mix, and then for even additional support, we do have a warrior priest who is going to be coming in with the Shield of Faith. He also has the Hammer of Sigmar, and he also has a Scroll of Shielding for a little nice extra 22% damage resist to whoever he decides to give that to. And then for spellcasting, it is going to be a Bright Wizard with Burning Head and Fireball, and the very nice abilities there, especially against the Greenskins. They have so many regenerating characters, and then their low leadership or low armor in general is going to really help with those Burning Heads. But that is pretty much going to be it for the forces of Sigmar. Now for the Greenskins, going to be coming on in, led by Supermunchkin. It is going to be a front line of some goblins. On the flanks, it is going to be plenty of mobility with those Goblin Wolf Rider Archers, Forest Goblin Spider Riders. Pretty standard for the Greenskin, seeing 6 Skirmish Cav in total. We also do have the Morgrim's Mangy Marauders over on this far side for some armor-piercing missile fire, and that will do quite well against like the Demigryph Knights, able to kind of get some nice value from that. We also have a couple of Orc Boar Boys just for a nice bit of additional mobility for that melee department. We have Ground the Paunch as Lord, bringing 3 of his base items, and these are really the 3 that you pretty much see all the time. Is the Language of the Boys, we have a Doug Great Un is here, and we have a Lucky Banner. The Lucky Banner, one of his most abilities, because he gets plus 40 melee attack and plus 40 damage resist, so that just makes him an absolute tank, and he actually can deal out some good damage in that meantime. And then for the heavy infantry, it is going to be Black Orcs, as we have 3 of those going to be spread out across the field, and then we also have a 8 peak loonies thrown into the mix as well. Unbreakable, nice fanatics, going to be able to kind of get through those Empire State troops, do a lot of damage there. And we also have a Giant River Troll Hag coming in with Spirit Leech, the Power Stone, as well as Mither. And then we have one more bit of spell casting here with the Orc Shaman, as the Orc Shaman is going to be coming in with a Brain Burst. Again, just some nice chaff clearing tools on that side. But that is pretty much going to be it for the Greenskins here. So let's roll on in, as we do have some grenade launchers getting a little bit of skirmish power in early enough. Just trying to clear out as many of the incoming troops, like the Goblins is really going to be their best targets. And if they can see those 8 peak loonies, that is really the one they want to clear out the most. Volkmar the Grim, though, going to be just kind of rolling in. Not really a whole lot that he has to be too worried about. I mean, Black Orcs will be able to kind of chunk through him a bit, but with his mass, he should be able to kind of get in and out. And Mither, or Spirit Leech, is going to be going down. I'm giving a little bit of damage. I think that Spirit Leech is going to be a little bit wasted. I think it would be much better cast on either like the Outriders or like the Demis, try to peel off some models, because Volkmar the Grim, unless you're able to take him down, he's just going to be able to heal right up through that, and he's getting a nice banishment, a nice Soulfire as well. Going to be really just chunking down a lot of the Greenskin units. is able to rout off these goblins, do a little bit of damage to those Black Orcs. He did take a bit of damage in return, and a nice brain burst, though, right into the middle of all these halberdiers. These huntsmen doing a lot of damage to that grouped up bit of infantry, and now the Greenskins just going to be slowly getting a nice little surround off with the rest of their mobility here, but they have lost a lot of their cheap chaff infantry. Their goblins have taken quite a bit of damage, and we have a nice burning head here, going to be cleaning out all of these Night Goblins, but not before they're able to get one of their fanatics off, and that fanatics is going to be doing a bunch of damage to this infantry, just going right through these halberdiers. That was a very nice fanatics cast, but that will be the only fanatics cast, considering they are already just on slivers of HP, so that will be disabled for the rest of the fight, even if they are able to survive this frontline engagement. And now the Empire, though, is just going to be falling back to all their huntsmen, just going to be plucking away, getting some nice shots on these Goblin Wolfrider archers. Considering these guys are large entities, they will be getting that bonus versus large, even if they are relatively smaller on the model count. So those huntsmen are going to be doing a bunch of damage. Another brain burst is going to be going down right into it, doing a nice bit of damage, almost a quarter HP off of them on that cast. But Volkmar the Grim just continuing to wheel around that front line, just a powerhouse right now, especially with all of the support and the Warrior Priest as well, having that Hammer Sigmar and Shield of Faith. So at any given time, you're almost going to be guaranteeing at least some kind of buff in that front line if you're alternating between that Warrior Priest and Volkmar the Grim. So that is going to be really helping that front line just last all that much longer against like the Black Orcs. Now he does have the Great Unleash here, going to be popped by Grom the Paunch, giving that extra melee attack and leadership based weapon damage. All that stuff really going to be allowing these Black Orcs to trade even higher up into all of these units. But Volkmar the Grim getting a little stuck in. He is mithered after all. He's going to be slowing down his advance, but he is going to be stuck in. But he is kind of baiting out a nice little blob here, as that Burning Head going to be going right through all these units. Now it is Black Orcs in there, so they're not going to be taking all that much damage, but those Goblins did take quite a bit in the meantime. And the Black Orcs and the rest of the Greenskins just slowly filtering their way closer and closer to these Huntsmen, but there's just so much infantry left on the Empire side. At this point, it would actually probably be a good idea to get a nice little collapse in with these Halberdiers and Spearmen, as the rest of the Huntsmen do kind of pull back, but forming their ranks farther and farther behind, and the Greenskins have just been unable to get into the back line, while these Demigryph Knights on the far flank here have actually gotten themselves in a rather bad spot, getting surrounded by these Black Orcs and just shot to pieces by all these Force Goblin Spider Riders, and they do end up getting shattered. So really unfortunate on that end, but everything else is going rather well for the Empire. While they are getting pushed back, they are just continuing just to throw more and more bodies into the grinder, and Volkmar the Grim is still sitting very, very healthy, and there isn't a whole lot that the Greenskins can really do to do a lot of damage to him. They can get him surrounded by Black Orcs and infantry, but really, Volkmar, that is where he wants to be. He wants to be surrounded by things, because then he'll just give this buff as he just drops his Grand Hammer Sigmar, Grand Shield of Faith, so that's 22% damage resist and 24 melee attack to everything around him. Just going to be giving more and more buffs, and the Greenskins need to be very careful when they do blob, because they need to time it around his Soulfires, and especially when you have another Soulfire coming in from those Warrior Priests, you definitely need to be a little mindful of the timing on your charges, trying to whittle down Volkmar. But Volkmar is just a tanking of Lord right now, and the Greenskins have pretty much lost all of their support. Grom isn't going to be able to really solo Volkmar, especially when there's so many other units, and the Huntsman in particular. Grom can't really get too close, because he will take quite a bit of damage from those fire as he just continues. You see both of these buffs now getting surrounded by Volkmar and that Warrior Priest. So Shield of Face, Grand Shield of Face, so it's just a ton of stacks, but down goes that Warrior Priest, getting a couple hits in from Grom, and that Giant River Troll Hag is going to take down one of those sources of all those buffs. We get Fireball just missing Grom, as he does kind of do a little spin to dodge that. But down is going that Giant River Troll Hag. I don't think she'll be coming back. She is going to be able to regen, but those shots raining in might be enough to finish her off with that volley. We shall see. Is she going to be able to tank that? No, she will not. And down goes the casting for the Greenskins. I don't know if the Orc Shaman is still around, but I think that is going to be just about it for the Greenskins. Not a whole lot still left on the field. And it does look like Volkmar is going to be cruising his way to a Game 1 victory. Yeah, there's just nothing left for the Greenskins to really take down Volkmar. And if you take a look even at his healing cap, he still has 1,300 to heal, so it's not anything too ridiculous. He's used up most of his healing, but still, he's going to be able to heal himself all the way back up to full and then some. And there's just no way. All of these Black Orcs taking even more damage from that Soulfire. We have one healthy unit of Black Orcs. They've been out chasing those demis, but there's just so many bodies to throw at them. I just don't think there's any way for the Greenskins to break into this box anymore. Volkmar's just at like that critical mass where Grom can't get close. Especially, I mean, if these two Huntsmen are just save all of their shots for only Grom, then I don't think there's any worries whatsoever for the Empire. And that nice Fireball too, going to make a connection, doing a little bit of extra bonus, considering he is a regenerating character. It's going to take a little bit extra damage from that fire. And those Black Orcs getting whittled down by Volkmar, who you can now see his healing cap, but that is going to be army losses, and the Empire is going to take game 1, and Tutorial is going to go up 1-0 to Supermunchkin. So let's take a look at that after battle report, and we'll update the scorecard as well. All right, so for the Greenskins, the Mogreb's Mangy Marauders doing rather well, getting 740 there. Some of the Forest Scum Spy Riders did not do all too great. Kind of a trade-off, but overall they really didn't do well. They just didn't have any super good targets, and they couldn't really get close, especially with those Huntsmen sitting around getting some nice damage into them. And then the Black Orcs, they did do rather well, 1,200, 1,000, 1,100 on all of them, so some nice decent value there. They had some nice targets to hit at. Those Demis definitely succumbed to their armor-piercing axes. The AP Gloonies had one really good Fanatics cast, but with the AP Gloonies, you still need to be rather cautious with them. Get a Fanatics off, pull them back, wait for that other one, and then get that in. You don't want to be wasting them too early on. Of course, they did get hit by that Burning Head, so they were able, luckily enough, get at least one Fanatic off, because that is definitely one of the key targets for those Burning Heads. Just once you see a Fanatic on the field against the Greenskins, you want to try and get rid of their HP as quickly as possible. And then Giant Troll doing all right. The Orc Shaman had some very nice brain bursters throughout, just kind of centered in on those cheap, low-armored infantry, just trying to clear them out as best they can, but just wasn't quite enough. And Grom, the problem with Grom here was he just, with the build that the Empire brought, he just couldn't get into melee for very long because those Huntsmen were just such a major threat for him, so he had to be a lot cautious, and as a result, did not get a whole lot of damage in this fight. Now, as for the Empire forces, the grenade launchers doing nice work, clearing out a lot of chaff, which was pretty much what they were there for. They weren't going to be able to do a whole lot to Black Orcs or to any of the heroes, but really clearing out all those goblins was a very nice, and getting a nice decent value on top of that. And the Demigryph Knights, as we saw at the very late stages of their engagement, they got beaten down really roughly. Definitely overchased, trying to kind of screen out some of those skirmish cav, and then the one Black Orc unit just took them to town, as they just got essentially no value on these guys for a really expensive cavalry there. So only real fault here of this army was probably those Demigryph Knights. Otherwise, I mean, the Huntsmen doing very well. All the Halberdiers were just holding that line, and then there was just a factor, just they just kept throwing more and more bodies in, and the Greenskins just couldn't get in, and then that just allowed Volkmar, as you can just see, almost 3k in total value. It was just able to do so much damage, and not a whole lot could really bring him down. I mean, the Greenskins didn't really have any range units themselves. They didn't have any good dedicated anti-large, so Volkmar just had a blast of a time dealing with the Greenskin army. But that is going to be it for game 1. Let's roll on into game 2. This is a best of 5 series after all, so there's going to be plenty more action to come. For game 2, the Greenskins have brought out the big guns, as they're going to be coming in with some very elite heavy infantry and double giants to boot, as Tutorial commands the Greenskins this time around against Supermunchkin's Vampire Counts. So for the Greenskins, it is going to be Black Orcs for the bulk of the infantry, 3 units of those, and they do have all immune to psychology, which is just going to make them all the much better against the Vampire Counts, where their fear and terror not going to be doing any good work against them. We do have some Orc Biggins as well, can be thrown into that back line, and then some Night Goblin Fanatics in the center ranks here, just to kind of chew through all of the infantry that the Counts will be throwing their way. For the Lord, it is going to be Foot Azag, as he is going to be just sitting in the center ranks, giving a nice little bit of buffs to all the units around him, considering he does have a Slaga's Slashes, so that gives plus 10 melee attack and plus 4 leadership in an AoE centered around himself. And when he's just going to be sitting in those middle ranks, casting some Spirit Leeches, and just giving all of his units that just a little bit extra output and resistance to that fear and terror on the other side. And of course, it is the double giants, who at the time have 121 leadership. They have base 100 leadership. So all of the buffs, though, really going to be making them very hard for the counts to really deal with. They have just, that base leadership. They will fight all the way to the bitter end and most likely are going to die before they run, which is rather odd for the Greenskins. Usually that is not going to be the case. We have a Goblin Big Boss as well with They Needs Stabbin', a nice little debuff. Very cheap too, minus 30 armor, minus 24 melee defense to any lords or heroes, but a very tight formation here. We do have some skirmish cav up in the vanguard, as we do have some Forscom Spider Riders with the Morgrum's Magi Marauders, just for a nice little bit of skirmish, kind of bring the counts to them. Of course, the counts, that's pretty much what they're going to have to do anyways, but they do have a nice little bit of mobility of their own. So they have some Fellbats up in the sky, a couple units of those. We have some Vargeis as well, and for the Lord, it is going to be Manfred von Karstein with all of those winds of magic. So for his kit, he is going to be bringing the Master of the Black Arts, which is pretty much going to be an arcane conduit. So I'm getting a nice little bit of power recharge through that. He has Raise Dead. We have Invocation to Heck, Spirit Leech, and then of course he is on his Dragon, so that is going to be very nice for those breath attacks. And against those Black Orcs, it's going to be quite helpful indeed for that. But the counts also have some nice little box breaking tools with the Claw of Nagash. It is going to be the ROR Mortis engine, and it has a nice little chilling aura around it, and it does have a little bit of magic resist, considering one of the good ways for the Greenskins to snipe these guys out is with their spells. Fortunately or I guess not necessarily unfortunately, but the Greenskins aren't going to be bringing any of those spells. Instead, going to be relying on both of their giants. And of course, we do have a Vargulf as well. We have White Kings for the hero support, both of which are going to be bringing Scabscrath. So a nice little bit of chaff clearing tools, but they're not going to be as useful. They'll be very useful against the Fanatics, and that should be their priority one target, is dealing with those guys, because once they get those zombies in, they'll be able to see those guys, because against like the Black Orcs, that Scabscrath isn't really going to be doing all too much. But they do have tools for Black Orcs as well, because we have some Graveguard with great weapons. We have a pair of those, and then for the rest of the units, yeah, it is just going to be zombies for that front line, and really going to be relying on their Mortis engine, Vargulf, and then their Graveguard with great weapons to really get the job done. And of course, Manfred is going to be a very strong threat on top of that. But that is going to be it for the army, so let's get things rolling, as both sides, or at least the counts, are going to be moving up. Greenskins definitely need to kind of get a little move on themselves, can't be completely retreating into their backline. They do have to make an attempt to engage, so those Forscom Spider Riders and this stuff are still going to have to get some shots off. But in the meantime, counts are going to be moving their units. They also do have the Dire Pack and another unit of the Dire Wolves. So a bonus versus large. So they'll be, if they're able to get onto the Forscom Spider Riders, Morgrum's Magi Marauders, those guys will do quite a bit of damage. But right now, the counts just going to be getting a nice slow surround off onto the Greenskin forces. A very small amount of movement though on the count. So this is a replay from the tournament in the past. So I mean, if this is still here, it must have been both sides would have been just fine with this, as we get a little Spirit Leech going off on both sides though, as Azag the Slaughterer and Manfred going to be exchanging some Spirit Leeches, but Manfred definitely going to be able to tank that just a little bit, not just a little bit better, but quite a bit better, as you can see that health bar drop quite a bit, while Manfred's going to be able to shrug that off, just kind of passively heal through all of that. And now the Forscom Spider Riders and Morgrum's Magi Marauders going to be trying to get a little bit more skirmish out, trying to do as much damage as they can before the rest of the counts do kind of move forward. The Dire Pack trying to jump on top of the extended units of the Greenskin Skirmish Cav, but they're going to be retreating right back into the safety of their own infantry. And now the counts are going to be washing up against the wall of Black Orcs, the Giants. This is going to be a long drag of a match, I'm sure, as things are just going to be slowly draining both sides. But the Greenskins definitely do have quite a bit of our output with like both of those giants. One thing that I'm missing here is going, well, I guess Azag does have a Spirit Leech, so if there would have been like Banshees or something like that, Azag would have been able to kind of whittle them down. But most of the time you are going to be seeing the Orc Shaman come in with like Fistogork, giving that magic damage, because you add that magic damage to these like giants and the stuff, and they will just dumpster Banshees. But there is no Banshees on Super Munchkin's forces, and now the engagement is going to be getting underway as that Claw of Nagash coming forward, but probably a little bit too early right now. I think the Claw of Nagash needs to kind of back out just a little bit, doesn't want to be engaging just right now. We get a nice little breath attack here, some of the shots does go around, but that Claw of Nagash needs to pretty much just avoid these giants at all costs. And we do get one Scab's Grasp going down in the backline, and it is going to be hitting one of those Fanatics, so a nice cast on that, and another one going to be following up, going right down the line the other way, and might be getting him down below that 25% threshold. But Bats and everything just going to be diving down onto those boxes. All of these units, if you take a look at the colors here, we'll be able to see just kind of a few units of red mixed in, but so far the Greenskins are still holding the line with their Black Orcs doing quite well there, and there's a nice Fanatics going right through those Graveguard, and I think the Graveguard needed to be a little bit more cautious, and especially that Claw of Nagash. Claw of Nagash is very much needed here to get through all of this unit, and both of those Giants have been putting a major amount of pain on it, and Invocation is down, and if it is able to heal back up, it will still be able to kind of help in this engagement, but the Counts need to keep this thing alive at all costs, as Manfred does dive down on both those Giants, and that is not where he wants to be either, and both the Giants putting a lot of damage onto Manfred, and I think this is pretty much going to be game already. Two of the very strong counters to this build are going to be getting very danger low, and they're going to have to be very cautious now from this point on, as the Vargais pretty much sacrificing themselves so their Lord can escape, and especially with they need stab and also down that minus 30 armor, minus 24 melee defense, just allowing those Giants to do all that much more damage. And they need to be cautious now. The Claw of Nagash is crumbling right now. It needs to pull out of range of all of these Force Scouts Spider Riders, and it looks like a Spirit Leech as well is going to be going down. It does have magic resist, but still, when it is that low, it is going to be just pretty much making sure it stays crumbling. While Azag himself is taking a lot of damage, he is getting very low himself. That is not going to be too much of a problem, as considering the counts are themselves quite low. Black Orcs are still rather healthy for the most part. There are they are getting a little beat down, but one is rather healthy. But the big problem here is going to be both of the Giants very healthy, and Manfred goes down trying to snipe out Azag. Unfortunately, is going to be meeting the business end of the Giant and that Goblin Big Boss, and now it is going to be just the Vargolf for that melee stopping power, and it's not going to be able to bring down these Giants. If there was two Banshees here, that might be a little different story, bringing down these Giants, considering there is no magic damage, but as is the White Kings, definitely not going to be able to beat them, and that Claw of Nagash has also finally crumbled away, so this is going to be, I think, a game for the Greenskins that are going to be able to pull forward here. There's nothing that can bring down the Giants at this point. The Vargolfs maybe over time, but a nice little Fanatics in the end going to be finishing off these Graveguard, and that is going to be army losses. The Counts crumble away to dust, and that is going to be our match. So we'll update the scorecard and then take a look at the after battle report. I think the Counts needed to be a little bit more patient here with this battle. Definitely getting that Claw of Nagash beaten down by those Giants. Really needed to make sure it avoided the Giants at all costs. Wherever the Giants were, that was where the Claw of Nagash needed to not be. And that it doesn't see what happened here in this fight, is that Claw of Nagash got lots of damage dealt this way. It was actually still able to get 1,000 in value, but still the Claw of Nagash, it could have generated insane value, especially with all those Black Orcs there. But it just, it needed to be very patient. It needed to stay away from the Giants, kind of poke in, move away. It has decent mass, so it's really hard to kind of lock that thing down. And then Manfred von Karstein as well. Got some decent value, some nice breath attacks. Spirit Leeches on Azag were pretty nice. However, it just needed to be a bit more patient. Those Giants are a major threat, especially when they are right next to each other. It is very hard to really take those guys down. And that is normally why, I mean, there's different ways to kind of go about this matchup. Banshees have been the way to go for a long time. but Greenskins have started bringing just dedicated magic damage to deal with them, so that's why you're seeing White Kings more often. They are still very good because of their Scab Scrath, and they can just do a lot of damage like the Fanatics or like the 8-peak Loonies, which is a very common pick as well, and they did do some nice value from that. Both of the Graveguard of Great Weapons were the target of those Fanatics, and they did take a lot more damage from them than they would have liked, so as a result they weren't able to trade as well into Black Orcs, and two of them weren't going to be able to kill 3 Black Orcs anyways. That's just why the Claw of Nagash needed to stay alive, and unfortunately that was not the case in this fight. All of the range mobility, or the flyers and mobility, not really able to generate a whole lot of value. They didn't have any really good targets. All of the Greenskin skirmish calves stayed nice and safe inside of their infantry. And then the Vargulf as well didn't really get all that much value. As for the Greenskins, the Giants getting 2,000 in value on that one, 1,300 on the others. And then for the rest of the units, the Black Orcs able to get some okay value, lots of kills, and we're able to pretty much just stay around, because with the Claw of Nagash gone and the Graveguard with Great Weapons so depleted, these guys were going to be a very hard nut to crack. Fanatics getting some decent value, Goblin Big Boss getting good value, and in addition to that, they need Stab would really helped bring down Hanford all that much quicker. And then Azag himself getting some nice damage his way with those Spirit Leeches, actually pretty much solely on those Spirit Leeches. Then just that AoE buff to the melee attack was really a nice bit, but it is still an interesting pick. Bring in Azag, not necessarily the most meta pick, but it definitely has its uses. It's not a complete waste with all of those buffs and that magic damage in particular. Otherwise, that is going to be it for game 2. Time to get on into game 3. Settra the Imperishable is going to be using his own 2 feet in this Game 3 matchup, flanked by his pair of bodyguards as he contends with the forces of Bretonnia, as Tutorial will be commanding the Tomb Kings here against Supermunchkin's Bretonians. So it is going to be Settra the Imperishable, on foot no less. Definitely a strange sight to be seeing for sure. Usually you'll be seeing him almost always either on his chariot or his War Sphinx. But on foot, he is bonus versus large and armor piercing, so he can have a bit of use against the Bretonians, who will almost always be bringing quite a bit of cavalry. It is still probably a little bit suboptimal, but we'll see how it is able to make its worth here in this fight. He does have the Blessed Blade of Patrat, which gives fire damage to himself, as well as that blinded effect, which is minus 30 accuracy, minus 24 melee attack and defense. He also has Usev's Incantation of Desiccation, a nice little debuff in an AoE, so minus 24 melee attack and melee defense on top of that. He is going to be foregoing his lore passive, mostly because the Usev's Incantation is a little bit more expensive, so you're not going to be able to spam that as much. So going to be foregoing that, just going with Unyielding Will instead, and then both of the Tomb Princes rolling in with the Curse of... I tried to refresh myself on this. So the Curse of Dejaf, I was right on that. So that is that Rampage ability, minus 24 melee attack, but that is only usable when they do drop below 50% health, but that is an AoE Rampage on top of that. So it can really change an engagement quite effectively, especially with cavalry on the Bretonian side, forcing them to engage where they most normally wouldn't want to, like against all the Spearmen, for example, because their infantry is going to be Skeleton Warriors. We have some Tomb Guard for that second rank. We have a couple of Skeleton Archers, and then Spearmen for that back line, going to be protecting a pair of Screaming Skull catapults as they fire away at the approaching Bretonians, and then it's going to be 2 Sepulchral Stalkers in the front with their armor-piercing missile fire, and they do quite well against large targets. And unlike their ROR, they do not have that poison, so it's not going to be quite as good at kind of keeping those cavalry at bay, but still very strong ranged on those. They just have to be safe because they're not as great in melee, even though they are bonus versus large and armor piercing. If Cav do engage them, the Cav will pretty much always win that, especially if they don't have any support. But that's going to be it for the Tomb Kings. As for the Bretonians, it is going to be the Fey Enchantress leading the charge, as she does have the Chalice of Potion. She has the Favor of the Fey, which gives plus 40 melee defense, or melee attack. I don't know why I said defense, but then that Chalice Potion is that Bound Comet of Casadora. We have Arcane Conduit Earthblood, and of course she does have that Drain in an AoE around her with that additional minus 5 melee attack. And we also have a Paladin going to be rolling in support with Guardian, and then is going to be Goat Trick bringing up the rear as he charges forward. Bonus versus large, armor piercing, magic damage to boot as well. Unfortunately, there isn't going to be any a lot of large targets to be going up against. He will be doing a good work against like the Sepulchral Stalkers, but of course he is still unbreakable. He does have his own little bit of healing, so take a look at that ability there. So the Heroic Fortitude gives him a little chance to get a little bit of healing off, so it doesn't necessarily have to rely on the healing from the Fae, though that will help because it's not always a guarantee that that thing's going to be going off or even going to be hitting him for that matter. There is a little chance that it's going to miss entirely. For the infantry, it is going to be peasant mobs with some battle pilgrims mixed in with the holy wardens a la Macentel, who do fire damage and magic damage. So against Tomb Kings, very nice pick there. And then it's going to be pretty heavy in the range, as we do have a bunch of peasant bowmen, so we have some fire arrows and pox arrows mixed into the line here. So 3 fire, 2 pox in total. In the back line, going to be some questing knights, armor piercing, be able to do some quite well. If there was some constructs, they'd be able to whittle them down bit by bit. And then we just have some more spearmen. And then in the tree line over here, we're going to be having a bit more cavalry, as we do have a pair of knights errant running through the trees here. So plenty of mobility on the Bretonnia side. So let's get things moving. So the 2 Screaming Skull Catapults really going to be forcing the Bretonnia's hand here. They're going to be moving right on up, and usually this is how Bretonnia deals with it anyways. They're just going to rely more on their range and their cavalry. But the Screaming Skulls do have a nice little debuff as well to leadership, which is going to be with that take cover. So -8 leadership for a unit that does hit. So just a little bit of extra push to kind of route things off. And against like these peasant bowmen, they can actually route those guys off pretty quickly with that combination. Sepulchre Stalker's going to be coming out of stock, going to be getting some nice volleys into the Paladin, getting some nice damage in before the rest of the Bretonnian infantry does move up. But that is going to be forcing like the Fae and the Paladin to kind of steer clear. I think they're maybe going to try and get a little bit of drain in on the skeleton warriors, but all of these Sepulchre Stalkers are going to be forcing them back. Going to be waiting because, I mean, as we're talking about earlier, those Screaming Skull Catapults, their debuff to the leadership, you can see both of these peasant bowmen are already wavering, and the shots are going to continue to rain down. And if they are going to able to clip, as both shots do land in at the end, they're going to be pushing their leadership farther and farther down, and these two very well might be routing here off of another volley or two, and both of those skeleton archers now going to be targeting these battle pilgrims, doing a nice bit of damage to them so early on in this fight. And the Bretonnian Cav starting to get their positions, though, in their rear. Going to be looking to kind of collapse upon their backline. Gotrek going to be charging forward with all the peasant mobs. He is unbreakable. Going to be a very hard target to bring down, though, because, I mean, all 3 of these hero squad here, I mean, all 3 of them together should be able to beat Gotrek. But Gotrek is going to be having the support of the Paladin and the Fey Enchantress, as he is going to be charging forward against Tetra, though. He's going to be losing out on that bonus versus large. Usef's incantation desiccation goes down lower in that melee attack and melee defense, and now all of these units, and boy, are they just doing a bunch of damage so far. I mean, Gotrek is dishing it out to Cetra, but Gotrek is just taking so much damage here. It is 3 versus 1, and man, oh man, is Gotrek not being able to do all that, getting way too ambitious here. And that is going to be pretty much it for Gotrek. He's not going to be able to get out of that one. The Fae and Paladin unable to really support him, trying to drain down these Tomb Guard as the rest of the Bretonnian Cav do kind of come in. A Common Castador does go down, trying to hit these skeleton archers, but they do pull up and dodge out of that. And now all of these range units are going to have to try and really carry their weight. The Question Knights in the back need to start trying to put some pressure on that back line, and they're going to be mindful of the Sepulchre Stalkers, but down is going Gotrek. He is still alive, though. I guess he's gotten at least one of his healing, but both of these Tomb Princes are going to be left to take him down, as Cetra does kind of pull out. He did take a little bit of damage that he probably didn't want to take, but as for that trade of dealing with Gotrek, it's going to be well worth the cost. And now both of these Paladins, or both of the Tomb Guard, or Tomb Princes, the Tomb Princes are going to be going for that Paladin, and the Paladin is taking quite a bit of damage right now. They are both bonus versus large, these 2 Tomb Princes, and they're going to be taking down quite a bit of HP off of him, and he's going to be pulling back with the Fae, as Gotrek is just diving forward, getting surrounded by Sepulchre Stalkers. Though even though he is very low in health, he should actually be able to dish out some decent damage against those guys. Really, both of these Tomb Princes need to commit to finishing him off from here and now. Another hit should be able to bring him down, and that is all it is going to take, as Cetra the Imperishable going to be charging forward. He gets another, looks like an incantation. There goes the incantation desiccation, once again hitting down all of these units here, the Spearmen, the Battle Pilgrims, all of which going to be much reduced in melee, and things are looking rather well for the Tomb Kings right now, though their front line is slowly collapsing, and that is going to be opening up for both of these Skeleton Archers to get compromised, and then into those Screaming Skulls. And the all of the Knights Errant and the Questing Knights really need to put a lot more pressure on than what they are. Cetra is getting rather low, but so is the Fey Enchantress. The Fey Enchantress does take a hit from Cetra, and that is going to cause her to rout with all of these units. We also have the Ushapti Summon as well, going to be pinning her in as the Tomb Kings try and finish off the Fey Enchantress here. Now, though she is able to kind of squeeze out just a little bit, though that Tomb Prince is going to be trying to finish it off, and she is able to pull out through her own units, so she might be back to fight again. Though she is very low in terms of overall HP. Balance power is now slightly in the Tomb King's favor, especially with the Fey gone, with Gotrek gone as well. It is going to be pretty much just the Paladin for that leadership in that front line. And these shots at point-blank range from those Sepulchral Stalkers doing a lot of damage to those Knights Errant, and just all this blobbed up infantry and cavalry for the Bretonnians. So a lot of damage there. Paladin was forced to disengage. So really both of these Tomb Princes and Cetra all being bonus versus large is being a major pain for the Bretonnians here, as they've been forced to play a lot more cautiously, and even with all of their range now firing in, it just doesn't look like they're going to be able to pull it back. They've lost too many units. Paladin does dive in once again and is going to be routing, and I think just trying to finish off Cetra, but unfortunately is unable to do so, as you get another Incantation of Desiccation, as these Holy Warden is going to be just succumbing to the Tomb Guard here. Normally would they trade rather well, but with all of those debuffs, the Paladin does finally break. The Fey is back on the far front, but I think there is just too much left for the Tomb Kings. I mean, both of the Tomb Princes, I think, are going to be the biggest problem here. The archers aren't going to be able to get a whole lot of damage into them. And all of the skeleton archers on the Tomb King side are still sitting pretty healthy. So Stalker is getting a little low, but they have tons of ammunition left, and they should be able to deter any of the cavalry from really getting in at this point. Faye trying to bait out as many shots as she can, but she does have to be rather careful, because it isn't going to take a whole lot of shots to cause her to rout once again, and she doesn't want to be taking any undue damage, but she's just going to be getting peppered with those shots, not really diving, as she does end up shattering, and that's going to be it. Tomb Kings do carry through, and they will win out against Bretonnia, as that is army losses. A Child's Potion going down at the very end, but it does not land before the battle is finished. So that is going to mean Tutorial is going to advance 3-0. So I'll update the scorecard to reflect that, and we'll go over the final battle here before we do close things out. So for the Bretonnians, the Questing Knights and the Knights Errant really did not do very well. They needed to be a little bit more just putting pressure on all sides. I mean, it was a lot of like a spearman in the back, but they just needed to try and get in, pull the attention of the Tomb Kings multiple directions. I mean, skeleton spearmen, while they are bonus versus large, they still aren't really the strongest holding force. They will get worn down, especially with enough cycle charging. But I think the biggest misplay here was with Gotrek. He was very ambitious, thinking that he could take down Cetra and 2 Tomb Princes at the same time, and he definitely paid the toll for that. He did generate some decent value, 1400, but still, that was such a big waste of his abilities, just throwing him to die, essentially. He did get his glorious death after all, but still, that was not the best use of his abilities there. The Paladin and the Fae weren't really able to generate a whole lot of value on top of that. And then for the rest of the units here, the archers were able to get some well, I say that. One got some decent value, the other ones did not. They just weren't able to get some good shots in. Those Screaming Skulls really did do quite well at keeping them at bay and keeping them from really firing for too long. Battle Pilgrims in the front line, able to get some decent value between them. But otherwise, yeah, it was kind of a rough showing for Bretonnia here. As we look over to the Tomb King side, Screaming Skulls did rather well, and just their leadership debuff against the Peasant Bowmen was really what helped in the engagements even more, because that was a lot less poison coming into the engagements, a lot less of that fire damage, and just able to do a lot more damage in that regard. Sepulchral Stalkers did all right. Both of the Skeleton Archers, though, doing nothing too ridiculous either. Tomb Guard rather well, and then the rest of the infantry just there to hold the line. And really, the 2 Tomb Princes doing really well, 700 and 900, and then Cetra getting 2k in total value. Really surprising seeing him rack up that kind of value on foot, no less, but he was armor piercing bonus versus large, so against like the Fae and the Paladin was really able to get some nice value, and against all the cavalry as well. So surprisingly enough, he did pay for himself and then some. Definitely not expecting to see that, especially when he is so strong on his War Sphinx and Chariot. That's usually what you'll see him at, but it worked out this time around, and Tutorial does advance 3-0 against Supermunchkin. But that is all I'm going to have for you today. I do hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good one.